Sadhguru Nath Maharaj Ki Jai, and welcome to Jagadambe Reads the Holy Books of India, Bhaktavijaya103. As you may remember, Yanadev and Nama went to the Shiva temple to worship. Nama's kirtan before Nagnat. Namdev then stood before the great door of the temple and began a kirtan. He took in his hands the cymbals and veena and loudly shouted the names of God. Bringing into his mind the image of Vital, he closed both his eyes. He had no longer the least consciousness of possessing a body. He put aside the thoughts of honor and insult and the proud ways of people. He put aside every form of desire and in his love performed the kirtan. He put aside all idea of distinctions. He cut off from himself the idea of duality. He broke through the bonds made by the snare of desires and danced in his joy and love. Accompanying the sound of cymbals, drum, and veena, he performed a kirtan with feelings of love. A great crowd of people came with the desire to listen. Just at that time of the full moon, the husband of Rohini, the moon, looks beautiful in its various phases, and the ocean, seeing it, swells with the joy of love. Or as when the oil wick is pushed far forward, the flame is increased. Or as at a Brahman's oblation, the sun feels happy. Or as when drinking nectar, one's body becomes immortal. Or as when a generous person distributes his wealth, beggars rejoice. Or as when the rain falls, the grass grows in desert places. Or as when Brahmins receiving sweet, delicious food, they become supremely happy. So, in listening to Nama's kirtan, all good listeners became happy. In listening to God's goodness, in their joy of love, tears fell from their eyes. Their throats choked with emotion. Their hairs stood on end. And the hearers, for the time being, lost all consciousness of body. When the king throws aside the glory of courage, his army naturally does the same. If the mind drops all shame of sensual things, then the organs of sense forget their functions. So when Namdev cast aside his consciousness of body, the very same thing happened to the listeners. As they listened to the character and deeds of Sri Hari, they all lost consciousness of body. As they brought into their minds the Lord of the world, they clapped their hands in joy, they shouted aloud the names of Vital, and their minds were unable to contain their happiness. Brahmins angry with Nama. Brahmins just then came from bathing, having rubbed ashes all over their bodies. Around their necks they had placed garlands of rudraksha. Their dotars were wet, their hands held the water and the 16 materials intended for their worship. In order to bathe the god, they came to the big door of the temple. Here Nama was performing his kirtan, singing and dancing in joy and love. An enormous number of people were assembled there, and the Brahmins could see no way of getting through them. Outwardly, they had performed their devotions and baths, but their minds within were defiled with wrong thoughts. They said to the people, "Look out, or you will touch us. Oh, get off to one side." A bad person who has anger in his heart thinks that everybody is impure. And as he has fallen into a net of wrong thought, he does not see anyone as pure. In the praise services in honor of Hari, there is no such thing as being defiled by one another. So in going into an assembly of Brahmins to see and worship Shiva and Vishnu, no one should think of defilement. Sadhguru Nath Maharaj Ki Jai. Thank you for coming. I hope you come again.